Welcome to Session 4 of our study on the Second Book of Esdras. We'll read chapters 8 and 9 and continue with the dialogue or arguments between Ezra and the angel Uriel. We'll hear some more of the signs of the coming of the new age. In this session, we reach the midpoint of both 4th Ezra, that is, chapters 3 through 14, and the book of 2nd Esdras. We're also going to talk about wisdom literature found in the Apocrypha in a couple of minutes. The Wisdom of Solomon, Suresh, 4th Maccabees, and Baruch are all considered to contain elements of wisdom literature. But first, we begin with a prayer. O God, our Father, open our eyes and enlighten our minds as we study your word. So grant that our minds may know your truth and our hearts may feel your love, and then confirm and strengthen our wills that we may go out to live what we have learned. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. 4 of the books of the Apocrypha are considered to be wisdom literature. In our Old Testament, there are 3 wisdom books: Proverbs, Job, and Ecclesiastes. If you will recall, Proverbs is mostly a collection of wise sayings designed to guide young people through their daily lives. A gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up wrath. Or, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Fools despise wisdom and discipline. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a broken spirit dries up bones. The story of Job deals with the questions of why good men suffer. Why do bad things happen to good people? Ecclesiastes is the story of someone looking back at life and wondering what it has all meant. There's a time for everything under the heavens, a time to be born, a time to die, a time for tearing down, a time for building up. We know these words, even if we don't fully understand them. The Wisdom of Solomon from the Apocrypha purports to have been written by King Solomon, although more likely written in the late 1st century BCE or in the early 1st century CE. In many ways, it sounds similar to Proverbs. It can contrast the life of the just with the life of the wicked. It is written as though to kings or rulers of the world there is a promise to reveal the mysteries of wisdom to the reader. Solomon, the implied author, describes his life in quest for wisdom and the benefits that wisdom is able to bestow. Wisdom, described as Lady Wisdom, was with God at the creation and is available to those who seek her. The other primarily book of wisdom in the Apocrypha is titled Ecclesiasticus, or the Wisdom of Jesus, son of Suresh, usually referred to simply as Suresh. This book was originally composed in Hebrew, unlike most of the books of the Apocrypha. The author identifies himself as Jesus, son of Eleazar, son of Suresh. He conducted a school for prospective scribes and sages, maybe in conjunction with the Jerusalem temple complex. It was the author's grandson who produced the Greek version in Egypt in 117 BCE. Suresh is the largest wisdom book that we have from antiquity. It provides a window into the life of ancient Israel at a pivotal point in Jewish history, illustrating how and what Jewish wisdom teachers taught. Ben Sirah gives his opinions on such topics as creation, death, fear of the Lord, friendship, happiness, and honor and shame. Baruch is a mixture of different types of literature. There are elements of historical and devotional writing in Baruch, but it also includes a wisdom poem that takes up most of chapter 3 and part of chapter 4. Wisdom personified as a woman is elusive, but known to God, who gave her to Israel as the Torah. It is similar to Suresh and to Job in places, with its focus exhorting Israel to learn wisdom. The 4th book of Maccabees is intended as a philosophical demonstration of the popular maxim that reason is able to master the passions, with the added dimension that Torah observance provides the most effective training to achieve that goal. This generally fits the definition of wisdom literature. With that, we move on to the 2nd book of Esdras. At the end of chapter 7, Ezra appealed to what he understood to be a merciful and compassionate God. God is gracious to those who turn in repentance to his law. God is patient and bountiful. God is called the giver and the judge because if he did not pardon those who were created by his word and blot out the multitude of their sins, there would probably be left only very few of the innumerable multitude. The angel, on the other hand, stood fast to the idea that it is the nature of things and that only a few should be saved. We go on now to chapter 8, and it is Uriel's turn to state his position, verses 1 through 3. He answered me and said, "The Most High made this world for the sake of many, but the world to come for the sake of only a few. But if I tell you a parable, Ezra, just as when you ask the earth, it will tell you that it provides a large amount of clay from which earthenware is made, but only a little dust from which gold comes. So is the course of the present world. Many have been created, but only a few shall be saved." The angel tells us another parable explaining how nature works. Nature provides a lot of clay, but only a little gold dust. So we go back to Ezra, who again appeals to God's mercy. So verse 4. I answered and said, "Then drink your fill of understanding, my soul, and drink wisdom, O my heart. For not of your own will did you come into the world, and against your will you depart. For you have been given only a short time to live. O Lord above us, grant to your servant that we may pray before you, and give us a seed for our heart, and cultivation of our understanding, so the fruit may be produced, by which every mortal who bears the likeness of a human may be able to live. For you alone exist, and we are a work of your hands, as you have declared, and because you give life to the body that is now fashioned in the womb and furnish it with members, what you have created is preserved amid fire and water. And for 9 months the womb endures your creature that has been created in it. But that which keeps and that which is kept shall both be kept by your keeping. And when the womb gives up again what has been created in it, you have commanded that from the members themselves, that is, from the breasts, milk, the fruit of the breast, should be supplied, so that what has been fashioned may be nourished for a time, and afterward you will still guide it in your mercy. You have nurtured it in your righteousness, and instructed it in your law, and reproved it in your wisdom. You put it to death as your creation, and make it live as your work. If then you will suddenly and quickly destroy with so great labor what was fashioned by your command, to what purpose was it made? And now I will speak out. About all humankind you know best, but I will speak about your people, for whom I am grieved, and about your inheritance, for whom I lament, and about Israel, for whom I am sad, and about the seed of Jacob, for whom I am troubled. Therefore I will pray before you for myself and for them, for I see the failings of us who inhabit the earth, and now also I have heard of the swiftness of the judgment that is to come. Therefore hear my voice and understand my words. I will speak before you." The debate is renewed with an explicit appeal by Ezra for God to show mercy to his people. After a short introduction here, Ezra asks God to make it possible for the fallen man to obtain life. God has created man with infinite care, and the destruction of man seems in these circumstances incomprehensible. But Ezra does not pause for a reply to what he has just said, but states that he will leave in God's hands the fate of mankind at large, and that his concern is for Israel. He classes himself with the sinners and begins to pray. We go to the last half of verse 9 and Ezra's prayer. The beginning of the words of Ezra's prayer before he was taken up. He said, "O Lord, you who inhabit eternity, whose eyes are exalted and whose upper chambers are in the air, whose throne is beyond measure and whose glory is beyond comprehension, before whom the hosts of angels stand trembling, and at whose command they are changed to wind and fire, whose word is sure and whose utterances are certain, whose command is strong and whose ordinance is terrible. whose look dries up the depths of whose indignation makes the mountains melt away, and whose truth is established forever. Hear, O Lord, the prayer of your servant, and give ear to the petition of your creature. Attend to my words, for as long as I live I will speak, and as long as I have understanding I will answer. O do not look on the sins of your people, but on those who serve you in truth. Do not take note of the endeavors of those who act wickedly, but of the endeavors of those who have kept your covenants and amid afflictions. Do not think of those who have lived wickedly in your sight, but remember those who have willingly acknowledged that you are to be feared. Do not will the destruction of those who have the ways of cattle, but regard those who have gloriously taught your law. Do not be angry with those who are deemed worse than the wild animals, but love those who have always put their trust in your glory. For we and our ancestors have passed our lives in ways that bring death, but it is because of us sinners that you are called merciful. For if you have desired to have pity on us who have no works of righteousness, then you will be called merciful. For the righteous who have many works laid up with you shall receive the reward in consequence of their own deeds. But what are mortals that you are angry with them? Or what is a corruptible race that you are so bitter against it? For in truth there is no one among those who have been born who has not acted wickedly. Among those who have existed here, there is no one who has not done wrong. For in this, O Lord, your righteousness and goodness will be declared, when you are merciful to those who have no store of good works. Ezra's prayer begins with an invocation to God, who is asked to hear the words of his servant. Then he follows with a petition that God will show mercy to his people by ignoring their sins and by paying attention only to those who have served him and kept his law. The petition is supported by confession of sin, which Ezra associates himself, and an appeal to God to treat sinners with mercy even though they have no good deeds to their credit. Let's go on to verse 37 and Uriel's response. He answered me and said, some things you have spoken rightly, and it will turn out according to your words. For indeed I will not concern myself about the fashioning of those who have sinned or about their death, their judgment, or their destruction. But I will rejoice over the creation of the righteous, over their pilgrimage also, and their salvation, and their receiving their reward. As I have spoken, therefore so it shall be. For just as the farmer sows many seeds in the ground and plants a multitude of seedlings, and yet not all that have been sown will come up in due season, and not all that were planted will take root, so also those who have been sown in the world will not all be saved. In his reply, the angel ignores the main point of Ezra's prayer. Now we notice here again that the angel is speaking as if he were God. Ezra's appeal was for God to show mercy to his people. Instead, the angel turns Ezra's own words against him to reiterate the point that God is not concerned with the damnation of sinners, but only with the salvation of the just, and uses an analogy to reiterate the point that only a few will be saved. Let's go to verse 42 in Ezra's response. I answered and said, if I have found favor in your sight, let me speak. If the farmer's seed does not come up because it has not received your rain in due season, or if it has been ruined by too much rain, it perishes. But people who have been formed by your hands and are called your own image because they are made like you, and for whose sake you have formed all things, have you also made them like the farmer's seed? Surely not, O Lord above. But spare your people and have mercy on your inheritance, for you have mercy on your own creation. Ezra protests at the implications of the analogy of verse 41. Many things may happen to prevent a seed coming up or a plant reaching maturity, but he cannot believe that God treats men with such indifference. He makes a final impassioned appeal to God to show mercy to his people. We go on to verse 46 in the angel's reply. He answered me and said, things that are present are for those who live now, and things that are future are for those who will live hereafter. For you come far short of being able to love my creation more than I love it. But you have often compared yourself to the unrighteous. Never do so. But even in this respect, you will be praiseworthy before the Most High, because you have humbled yourself as is becoming for you, and have not considered yourself to be among the righteous. You will receive the greatest glory, for many miseries will affect those who inhabit the world in the last times, because they have walked in great pride. But think of your own case, and inquire concerning the glory of those who are like yourself, because it is for you that paradise is opened, the tree of life is planted, the age to come is prepared, plenty is provided, a city built, rest is appointed, goodness is established, and wisdom is perfected beforehand. The root of evil is sealed up from you, illness is banished from you, and death is hidden. Hades has fled, and corruption has been forgotten. Sorrows have passed away, and the end of the treasure of immortality is made manifest. Therefore, do not ask any more questions about the great number of those who perish. For when they had opportunity to choose, they despised the Most High and were contemptuous of his law and abandoned his ways. Moreover, they have even trampled on his righteous ones and said in their hearts that there is no God, though they knew well that they must die. For just as the things that I have predicted await you, so the thirst and torment that are prepared await them. For the Most High did not intend that anyone should be destroyed, but those who were created have themselves defiled the name of him who made them and have been ungrateful to him who prepared life for them now. Therefore, my judgment is now drawing near. I have not shown this to all people, but only to you and a few like you. Then I answered and said, O Lord, you have already shown me a great number of the signs that you will do in the last times, but you have not shown me when you will do them. Once again, Ezra's appeal for mercy for God's people is rejected, and he is urged to think about the glorious future which awaits him, rather than to concern himself with the fully justified fate of the wicked. Ezra's objection to the analogy of the seeds is dismissed. He is then rebuked for associating himself with the sinners, while at the same time commended for his modesty in doing so. Contemplation of the future which lies in store for him ought to lead Ezra to put out of his mind the fate of the many who are lost. Their fate, in any case, is their own fault. Finally, Ezra seems ready to move on, and he asks about the timing of the signs. So we move on to chapter 9, where we will hear more about the signs of the end. We read the first 13 verses of chapter 9. He answered me and said, Measure carefully in your mind, and when you see that some of the predicted signs have occurred, then you will know that it is the very time when the Most High is about to visit the world that he has made. So when there shall appear in the world earthquakes, tumults of peoples, intrigues of nations, wavering of leaders, confusion of princes, then you will know that it was of these that the Most High spoke from the days that were of old, from the beginning. For just as with everything that has occurred in the world, the beginning is evident and the end manifest, so also are the times of the Most High. Beginnings are manifest in wonders and mighty works, and the end in penalties and in signs. It shall be that all who will be saved and will be able to escape on account of their works or on account of the faith by which they have believed will survive the dangers that have been predicted and will see my salvation in my land and within my borders, which I have sanctified for myself from the beginning. Then those who have now abused my ways shall be amazed, and those who have rejected them with contempt shall live in torments. For as many as did not acknowledge me in their lifetime, though they received my benefits, and as many as scorned my law while they still had freedom, and did not understand but despised it while an opportunity of repentance was still open to them, these must in torment acknowledge it after death. Therefore, do not continue to be curious about how the ungodly will be punished, but inquire how the righteous will be saved, those to whom the age belongs and for whose sake the age was made. Ezra is told to work out the timing for himself from the fulfillment of signs which have been foretold and about which he is now given further information. The fates of the righteous and the wicked in the period after the last days are described and contrasted. Ezra is again told not to bother about how the godless will be tormented, but only how and when the just will be saved. Let's go to verse 14. I answered and said, I said before, and I say now, and will say it again, there are more who perish than those who will be saved, as a wave is greater than a drop of water. Ezra refuses to be silenced, but reiterates in forceful terms the essence of the problem that occupies the central place of this third dialogue. Why is it that nearly all mankind is doomed to perish? Let's go to verse 17. He answered me and said, as in the field, so is the seed, and as are the flowers, so are the colors. And as is the work, so is the product. And as is the farmer, so is the threshing floor. For there was a time in this age when I was preparing for those who now exist, before the world was made for them to live in. And no one opposed me then, for no one existed. But now those who have been created in this world, which is supplied both with an unfailing table and an inexhaustible pasture, have become corrupt in their ways. So I considered my world and saw that it was lost. I saw that my earth was in peril because of the devices of those who had come into it. And I saw and spared some with great difficulty and saved for myself one grape out of a cluster and one plant out of a great forest. So let the multitude perish that has been born in vain, but let my grape and my plant be saved, because with much labor I have perfected them. Now if you will let 7 days more pass, do not however fast during them, but go into a field of flowers where no house has been built, and eat only of the flowers of the field, and taste no meat and drink and no wine, but eat only flowers, and pray to the Most High continually. Then I will come and talk with you. The angel does not respond to Ezra's demand, but repeats the view that man is responsible for his own destiny. It is because of sin and the effects of sin that mankind faces destruction. And it is only through God's grace that a very small number will be saved. The conclusion of the third dialogue differs somewhat from the corresponding passages in the previous dialogue. Ezra is still to wait 7 days for a further revelation and to pray. But this time he is told not to fast. Instead, he is to go to a flowery field and to eat only what grows there. No meat or no wine. From now on, Ezra abandons his complaints and accepts the viewpoint of God. The dialogue form is given up. Ezra becomes the recipient of revelations given in the form of visions. So now the character of the debate changes with neither side prepared to accept the viewpoint of the other. Just as in the end, Job comes to realize not through argument but through experience of God that he has been in the wrong, so Ezra will seem to come through experience of God, that God's treatment of man is fair. We move on to verse 26. So I went as he directed me into the field that is called Ardat, and there I sat among the flowers and ate of the plants of the field, and the nourishment they afforded satisfied me. After 7 days, while I lay on the grass, my heart was troubled again, as it was before. Then my mouth was opened, and I began to speak before the Most High, and said, O Lord, you showed yourself among us to our ancestors in the wilderness, and they came out of Egypt. And when they came into the untrodden and unfruitful wilderness, and you said, Hear me, O Israel, and give heed to my words, O descendants of Jacob. For I sow my law in you, and it shall bring forth fruit in you, and you shall be glorified through it forever. But though our ancestors received the law, they did not keep it, and did not observe the statutes. Yet the fruit of the law did not perish, for it could not, because it was yours. Yet those who received it perished, because they did not keep what had been sown in them. Now this is the general rule, that when the ground has received seed, or the sea a ship, or any dish of food or drink, and when it comes about that what was sown or was launched, or what was put in it destroyed, they are destroyed. But the things that held them remain. Yet with us it has not been so. For we who have received the law and sinned will perish, as well as our hearts that received it. The law, however, does not perish, but survives in its glory. The fourth section begins the same way as the first three, with a prayer in which Ezra, as he lies on the grass, troubled again in mind with all the same perplexities, attempts once more to set out the problem which concerns him. Israel had been given the law, but had failed to observe it. As a result, Israel, but not the law, had been destroyed. He is perplexed by this state of affairs and argues by analogy from the natural world that it is contrary to the usual way of things that those who had received the law should perish, but the law itself should survive. We go on to verse 38, and the vision of the weeping woman. When I said these things in my heart, I looked around, and on my right I saw a woman. She was mourning and weeping with a loud voice, and was deeply grieved at heart. Her clothes were torn, and there were ashes on her head. Then I dismissed the thoughts with which I had been engaged, and turned to her and said to her, "Why are you weeping, and why are you grieved at heart?" She said to me, "Let me alone, my lord, so that I may weep for myself and continue to mourn, for I am greatly embittered in spirit and deeply distressed." I said to her, "What happened to you? Tell me." And she said to me, "Your servant was barren and had no child, though I lived with my husband for 30 years. Every hour and every day during those 30 years I prayed to the Most High night and day. And after 30 years God heard your servant and looked upon my low estate and considered my distress and gave me a son. I rejoiced greatly over him, I and my husband and all my neighbors, and we gave great glory to the Mighty One. And I brought him up with much care. So when he grew up and I came to take a wife for him, I set a day for the marriage feast." Ezra's prayer is interrupted by his observation on his right of a woman in great distress. We later learn that this is part of a visionary experience. The woman tells him she is mourning a son, born after a period of 30 years barrenness and brought up with great care. And we will hear the rest of this story of the woman in chapter 10 in our next session. But for now, we're left with Ezra in the field of flowers in the middle of a vision. In our next session, we'll read and discuss chapters 10 and 11 and 12. There will be more visions and some interpretations of the visions. If you're not yet signed up for the Zoom discussion session, you can send an email to online.classes@northgateumc.org, and I'll send you the Zoom link. In the meantime, have a good week.